Hello, and my name is David Sangree, and I'm president of Hotel and Leisure Advisors. I'd like to welcome you to our interview series where we welcome owners and operators of several major water park properties across the United States to discuss how the pandemic has affected their property and how they are gearing up for the 2021 season. Today, I will be speaking with Michael Schwitek, the general manager of the Alabama Adventure and Splash Adventure in Bessemer, Alabama. Welcome, Michael.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So today, we're going to just start off. Our firm has had the chance to appraise your property a couple times, and I've had the chance to visit your property. And it's a very cool property. It's quite an expansive one with this combination of a water park and some amusement rides. But just for the general audience, maybe you could kind of describe what's there and just very briefly give a little background on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our park is family owned. We're owned by the Cook family. They took over in about 2014. At the time that they took over, it was just a water park, and they've been progressively adding amusement rides back into our arsenal of rides, basically. So at this point, we do have about 15 amusement rides and about 15 water slides. So we're about half and half now. So that's why we've rebranded ourselves as Alabama Adventure and Splash Adventure. Like you said, it is a very unique property. We're kind of in the rolling hills of Alabama in a wooded setting. It's kind of off of the interstate, but it provides that very kind of unique feeling here in Birmingham, Alabama.
So your property did get to open last year, but I know you were negatively affected by the pandemic. Perhaps you could just describe, what the 2020 season was like and how you, in terms of your, what rides were open and not open.
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely got to open during the end of May. So basically, we were one of the first amusement parks, even in the country, that got to reopen. We worked in guidelines with local jurisdictions, state and county, and all that good stuff. But we did get to open that very last week of May. So we actually didn't lose very much of our season. We lost about 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks of the season is all we lost. We have a very short season here traditionally. We're usually just Memorial Day to Labor Day. So it was about 2 weeks. Once we got the park open, we were obviously doing all the safety precautions that most parks you see are doing. However, that didn't affect the actual operations of any of our rides or slides. All of our rides and slides did continue to operate as normal with some restrictions, whether that be spacing out, operating every other car or just more distance between dispatch times and stuff of that nature. But everything did open by the end of May. So we were able to get everything open.
Oh, great. And how did you, in terms of your operating hours, did you keep the same as previous years, or did you have a little shorter schedule?
Yeah, so we are already operating at a very short operating schedule during the day. That's been kind of a defensive strategy of our park over the last few years. The park itself did have a rocky past a decade ago. So part of that strategy as we move forward is that we have limited hours. We don't open after dark. We're only open till about 6 or 7 p.m. In a normal season. So because of those limited hours, we didn't shrink them anymore. We kept them to the same exact hour. So we open around 10:30 in the morning, and we're open till 6 or 7 at night.
Okay. And just describe in 2020, how did you do your pricing and the per capita spending? Was it similar to other years, or did you give a lot of discounts?
So we actually did not offer a lot of discounts. One, because we were going to have to be limiting the capacity anyways. And we knew that was the case going out there. So we did keep ticket prices exactly the same as our plan was to keep them at. We didn't do any more discounts than we would have done in a traditional year. I think our thought was if someone's coming out, they're coming out. If they're not coming because of safety precautions or because they're, personal views of the situation, we felt that those those extra discounts weren't really going to prompt that decision. We really strongly felt that those decisions were based upon, their view of the situation and less about our pricing components. So we kept firm with those prices, whether that be with front gate as well as our in-park revenue spending. That all stayed the same prices. Now, we did see increases in per caps in the park throughout the season, and that may have been due to some of the checks that were given out. Some of the extra spending that was happening. At least those people that were coming out. We did have a lot fewer groups. Now that probably boosted our per caps as well, because groups traditionally don't spend as much money. Same thing, we had more daily admissions than we had normally, which meant that we had less season pass visits, once again relating to possibly higher per cap spending. But we did see overall food, beverage, retail per caps were up. The front gate was pretty much flat.
And your overall attendance for the year, was it higher than 2019 or was it lower?
No, it was absolutely lower. So we came in around about 50% down from the previous year.
Okay, so your revenues then were down on an annual basis.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. On a per cap basis, yeah, it was about the same. But yes, annual revenues were down around 50%.
And just describe like usage of cabanas and other attractions in the park. Was there any noticeable differences you could share with our audience?
Yeah, so cabana specifically, cabana sales were up tremendously. People just wanted that individual space, to basically social distance themselves from other people very easily. So our cabana sales were up. We have a lot of cabanas. We have 28 of them, and we're not a huge park, but we have 28, and there would be days that we could sell every single one of those during the season, even with less attendance. As far as other attractions are concerned, we did see a lot more push for the water park. There was a lot more people enjoying the water park rides and a little less in the theme park side this previous year. We did get the thought out there that people did feel safer in a water park, whether that be because, they're drenched in chlorine all day. I don't know, what the perception was, but, that felt like a easier way to spread out. Like in a wave pool, they could spread out. They weren't right up against someone. Same thing in the lazy river. You could kind of float around in your own bubble per se. And on the rides, you may be forced to be a little bit closer than what people would feel comfortable to do so.
Right, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about your plans for 2021. Are there any renovations or facility improvements that you're planning to do or are in progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing some renovations and some updates to the park, mostly in the fashion of we're separating out midways, we're pouring new concrete, we're making more spread out areas. So we do have the luxury of having a large property. We have a lot of acres. And there's a lot of unused places in the park that we are starting to develop now, because we're realizing that once we do get back up to that high capacity, we want to have plenty of room for that. But two, we want to have room for people to spread out in the times that we're in right now. So we have added a lot more patio space. We've added new queuing in front of a lot of the restaurants to make it more simple to understand where to queue. The same thing at the front gate. We've redeveloped our entire front gate area. We're doing bag checks before they get to the gates. I know that that's been done at a lot of parks already, but we've made that jump. We're actually also going cashless this year. So we're kind of following, the lead of some of the other parks that are doing that. Six Flags, we've been in talks with of how that process went, and we have decided to go 100% cashless. Now we're going to have cash to card machines where if people do come with cash, they can insert it into a machine and be given a card that they can utilize in the park, but also use other places. And that was one of our concerns, is that we didn't want to do all gift cards where we'd have to deal with refunding that money that they didn't use. We wanted that to be an easy thing. So we did that. And then we also are fortunate enough that we are actually putting in a large capital expansion this year as well. So we had been planning on doing this before everything happened, but we decided that we're going to go ahead and go forward with our plan for this year, putting in a huge new water slide. So we are putting in a 6-lane mat racer slide. Capacity is everything right now, and we want something that can put a lot of people through it. And for a water park, a 6-lane mat racer is kind of the #1 capacity thing, other than a wave pool or a river. But as far as the slide is concerned, we thought it made sense to go ahead and do that. Whether that be a gamble or not, we thought it was a good one to do that now. We also see a lot of local contractors and things that are needing work right now. And so we're able to do this a little bit more cost effectively than maybe we could have done during a normal year. So we're taking advantage of some of these, little changes in the world and trying to make the best out of it so that when all this is over, hopefully we come out as strong as ever.
Well, that'll be exciting to have the new mat racer.
Yeah.
The other improvements really reflecting the pandemic and what you're trying to do to make it a little more social distancing.
Right.
So in terms of your pricing and the cost for season passes and for the day passes, can you tell us what the prices are and then how they compare to the previous year?
Yeah, so our season pass and our daily tickets are increasing this year. One, because we are adding that new attraction. We kind of budget in a specific increase for each attraction that we do add, depending on what it is. So we are going up just $1 on our daily admission, which puts us at $39. So we're still under the $40 mark, where we feel is very, very cost effective for what we offer. Because we do offer free sodas in the park. Everybody gets free drinks all day long. Everybody gets free parking, free tubes, all that. So we have to kind of build that all into the model. But 39 is where we're at right now. We're going to hover below that $40 range until we do the next big expansion, whenever that may be. As far as season passes are concerned, last year, the rack rate, obviously there's discounts, but the rack rate was 85 last year. We're going up to 89. And that's where we feel safe as well. We don't want to crest that $90 level until we get another big attraction sometime, hopefully in the next couple of years.
Okay. And in terms of your attendance forecast for 2021, the vaccinations are going to be partially done, but certainly not all done. Mm-hmm. Are you, what can you tell us? Either tell us the figure or just tell us the kind of the range. Do you think your attendance will be in the above 2020 or above 2019, or where do you see attendance achieving?
Yeah, so right now, obviously, we have a lot of different forecasts out there, just depending on different things. But I think the most realistic one for us at this time is, so like I mentioned before, we lost 50% of our attendance last season. We are definitely planning on beating that this coming year, but we think it will take 3 years to get back up to that 19 attendance, which is where we're at our full. So we're kind of doing that in 30% increases over the next 3 years. So we think we're going to beat last year, by about that percentage, but it will take 3 years in our mind right now to get back up and then hopefully be able to elevate from there. So we're on a 3-year plan.
Now you guys have that roller coaster that I believe was there before, but then they shut it down and then it was reopened recently. Now, was that open and was every seat available this past year and the same this coming year, or was it only like every other seat was allowed?
So yeah, that's the Rampage. That's our wooden roller coaster. It operates PTC trains, and we did make the decision to just operate every other row during this season for those social distancing reasons. Like I said, the amusement park side wasn't too busy this year, so it wasn't much of an issue. And so that is how we decided to operate it. And right now, those plans are all the same for this year. We plan to start that way and just kind of see how different things are progressing. But yes, we do still plan to operate that every other row for the time being.
Okay. And just tell us about how the local government, as you know, the different states in our country have had dramatically different rules and regulations of social distancing and capacity. So tell us what Alabama did and what the city of Bessemer did that you had to deal with, or what those rules were.
Yeah, absolutely. So the state specifically outlined some plans. They weren't very specific to amusement parks. We were kind of a small little asterisk in the plan, but really it was our county that had the direct conversations with us and that we worked very directly with to ensure we were doing things up to their guidance. They came in and looked over and gave us recommendations. We gave them recommendations of what we thought was doable and safe and things of that nature. We did agree on doing a 50% capacity for the season, which is what we operated under. Now we didn't even have to deal with that. We actually didn't quite get to that. It was just under almost every single day. So that didn't really come into play, but that's how we operated. And then as far as the social distancing, we just had to make our best effort to enforce it as much as possible. Now, we weren't walking around and telling every single person to spread 6 feet out, mostly because that was just so hard to determine what people were part of which families and which groups and things of that nature. But we definitely had designated spots on the ground, whether that be in queue lines, whether that be in restaurant lines, and we gave verbal reminders on the park PA system constantly. And we're doing at opening, we were giving those reminders as well. Obviously, the mask wearing was something that we had to, enforce as well. So in order to come in the park, they did have to have a mask on. That actually wasn't enforced by the state until we were already open. And once that enforcement came out, then we brought free masks up to the front to give to some of our guests to help them get over that curve of getting used to having masks on them. After about 2 to 3 weeks, we decided to go ahead and stop giving away for free because we were spending a lot of money handing out all these masks. We were doing our best to announce that ahead of time to let guests know, hey, make sure you have that mask when you get to the park. And by that point, which was about mid-June, most people had them. We found that most people that we were handing the free ones to had them in their car. They just didn't want to go get them. So once we right. So once we started enforcing it, they're like, okay, I'll go back to my car and I'll go get my mask. But they had it, so they weren't really upset. We sold a few of them at the front gate, and that was fine. We weren't trying to profit off of any of this. It was just we had them there as a convenience if you had to buy them. And then we also had in the park, we had hand sanitizer stations, as most parks had, at convenient locations all throughout the park. Lots of signage that was out there. And just numerous other things. Disinfecting obviously was on regular schedules, whether that be with backpack sprayers that we were spraying different things throughout. And these are all things that we outlined with Jefferson County to make sure that what our plan was matched what their expectations were. And for us, we were basically compared to pools. So our entire facility had to operate under the same guidelines as local pools fell under. And so that's how we work things out.
How about your number of employees?
Mm-hmm.
So, in 2020, if you had a 50% reduction in revenue, did you have a 50% reduction in staff? And then what are you expecting for 2021?
Yeah, so we weren't able to do a 50% reduction in staff. We actually normally operated at very, very minimal staffing levels. With us being kind of a small park, we haven't broke that crest of where we started amping up our staffing for those larger days, because realistically we can do a large day, an 8,000 person day with the same staff we can do a 2,000 person day with, just because we have the flexibility of moving people around. So while we did have less attendance, we did have a little bit less staff here from day to day, but it wasn't much because we are normally operating at close to minimum levels at all times. So I would say overall, maybe 15 to 20% staffing cut. And this year we're kind of meeting in the middle. We've built our budget to, go back up another 10% in staff, but still not be at the 19 staffing levels for another couple years.
And have you, in terms of the wages you paid and the number of hours people worked, did you have to give pay cuts or reductions, or did everyone, did that not need to occur?
No, that didn't affect us at all. We kept all of our pay rates exactly the same, all the increments, whether that be leadership, supervision, even the full-time team. We did not have to furlough anybody during this entire thing. We kept everybody on payroll at their same rates throughout the entire thing. That was one of our goals as a company. With us being family owned, we really wanted to let people know that we were taking care of our family, because our employees, are our family. And we wanted to make sure that was apparent during all this. And we continue to plan to do that this year as well. There will be no changes with that as far as right now is concerned. So. And
the PPP loan, of course, was a major loan last year and is available this year. Without telling us any amounts, but did you successfully obtain it last year, and are you going to apply for it this year?
Yes, so we successfully applied and got our PPP loan last year, and we have already got this second one as well we've been approved for. So we were, literally every day looking at anything that's out there to help us stay alive. Obviously, all parks, were struggling last year. And so we knew we needed to look for anything out there, whether that be PPP, whether that be other, low interest loans that might be out there to help us get through this rough patch. We're exploring all opportunities and are continuing to do that, whether that be, contacting our local state jurisdictions and stuff to see if there's any other help that's out there. But yes, we successfully did get both of those.
That's good. So just some broader industry questions. How do you think the pandemic is going to affect the future of water parks in terms of attendance and popularity?
Honestly, at one point, I would have said that I think it's going to permanently, just a few months ago, even, I thought it might have some more permanent effects. But I definitely am getting to a point where I think that people are ready to get back to that normal. I don't think that we're going to see permanent. Now, it may take a couple years to get back. It may take 3 years. I'm not really sure. But I honestly think that we'll see very similar, if not even elevated for a small amount of time once we get out of this to the point where people are wanting to go to those water parks and wanting to go to those theme parks. I think that that's become kind of a traditional part of people's, lives, that it's an escape from reality, right? Like they're going to want to go back out of here as soon as they feel safe to do so. So I personally don't think there's going to be major long-term effects. Now, I think that we are all going to have to evolve, as we always do with our operation. But as far as the amount of people that attend these attractions, I think that will stay fairly consistent, if not elevate over the years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's a big pent-up demand from leisure travelers and leisure in general.
Right.
So people are going to want, those, you clearly had a lot of visitors last year as well, but there's certainly some who probably did not come because of this. And they're going to want to come back once they feel more comfortable.
Absolutely. And I'll touch on that really quickly. We actually last year, as well as a lot of our season pass sales for this year, which by the way, season pass sales for us this year are up right now, even over 19. So even over a good year, they're up. And we are also seeing that a high percentage of those sales, as well as a high percentage of our attendance last year, was first-time visitors that hadn't visited in 3 years. So it's almost like we've reached into this other market that wasn't really exploring us before because there was nothing else to do around the area. And we're hoping that once the pandemic is passed, that also our people that are tried and true visitors will start feeling comfortable, and hopefully that all adds together to increase our attendance over time.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the raising of the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour. I know in Alabama, your minimum wage is, well, I believe it's the current federal minimum. The state doesn't have its own minimum wage.
Correct.
That would be, of course, a substantial increase. So just describe, what, you don't have to give a personal opinion, but just, how you think this would affect your business, and, how do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, obviously with a lot of these types of things, I obviously see both sides. I always try to look at these things from both sides. I never want to be narrow-minded about any of it, but yes, it absolutely would affect. So we are Alabama, $7.25 is minimum wage. We made the decision a few years ago to bump our minimum up to $8. So we're already up to $8, which isn't huge, but that's great, for our local jobs and stuff like that. And we have been having plenty of applications come in. Even this year, we're continuing to see plenty of applications. So we're happy with where that starting is. Now, if that were to start elevating over the next 5 years, we definitely would have to make some adjustments. And we've already started that kind of, we're trying to look at ways to minimize some of the staffing things, whether that be with, once again, we're going cashless. That has something to do with that, because that minimizes some of the cash transactions. That minimizes the need for a cash control. That minimizes a lot of, different things. And we're pushing more online sales. Online sales are going up and front gate sales are going down, once again, meaning less staff. So those are all things that we're building in progressively for whenever this may happen, if it does, so that we are somewhat ready. We know that the staffing levels will have to go down a little bit. We also know that prices will have to go up a little bit. That's just the nature of it. Unfortunately, with a park our size, small level parks, our profit margins are not that great. A lot of small parks, we have very little room for error, if you will. So whenever something of this great of nature comes into play, we've got to make the smart decision and the right decision to stay in business, where we would never be trying to nickel and dime anyone, but we would have to raise those prices. So the front gate prices, as well as in park prices, would have to go up incrementally with that, as well as hopefully being able to figure out other ways to save internally to minimize what we have to increase on the outside.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Washington and there's a lot of controversy about it, so I'm not sure it's going to pass, but it does seem like they should have some kind of even a modest increase, because it's been at this level for so many years.
Yeah.
That of course is a great controversy among everyone. So
Absolutely. And to add to that as well, so we have, a few national corporations that are local to here that are going to that $15 wage, which is making things a little bit more difficult for us, because even though it's not mandated, they're jumping on that. We have an Amazon facility literally next door to us. We have a Buc-ee's, which is a Texas gas station chain that just opened up here right in town, all of which are paying 15 plus starting wages and are literally pulling from the same pool. At one point, we thought that $15 wage would mean that they were looking for someone with elevated experience, but we found very quickly that that was not the case. They're pulling from the same pool of basically high school students that we are. So that is a concern, obviously, and maybe that means that even without federal increases, we may have to start ticking our way up that chain to stay up to that same level as those local businesses are.
To better compete, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, well, you have to. Of course, working for you is so much more fun probably than working for those other places.
Absolutely.
But it's still there is a difference in the amount of cash you earn. So that's
yep. Yes.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes and talking with me today, and our interview series on water parks and the challenges of the pandemic in the coming 2021 season. So thank you so much.
Yes, you're very welcome.